my solution to the Olympic judging problem. I have an image list that I added to my project called IMG flag orbs. It is sized at 64 by 64, and I set the color bit to a depth of 32-bit since it's got a transparency channel. And then for the collection, I brought in those PNG files, which are the orbs for our project. Then on my form, I have a label called LBL Orb 1, LBL Orb 2, LBL Orb 3, and so forth down to LBL Orb 7. And then next to that is a label called LBL Country 1, LBL Country 2, LBL Country 3, and so forth to LBL Country 7. And then a text box named TXT Score 1, TXT Score 2, and TXT Score 3, and so forth. Now, I didn't name these China, France, Germany for the simple reason that maybe I want to change the nations. So I can reference whatever text is in this label Country 1 and label Country 2, and I could also change the orbs then very easily. I have a button here named BTN Process. That's going to be where all of our code is. There's another text box here called TXT Average Score, and I simply gave it a nice large font and a background of green. And then an orb here again, another label called LBL High Orb, LBL High Country, LBL or TXT High Score, the text box. Another label of LBL Low Orb, LBL Low Country, and a text box for TXT Low Score. And I just have some labels here that just say High Score and Low Score, and I didn't bother to name those. All my labels and text boxes and button here are inside a group box in which I have text of enter individual scores. And then the right-hand side also resides in a panel just to give it a little bit different background color. So it's more aesthetic than anything. Okay, so all of our code is in the process the scores. Let's take a look. I'm going to get rid of my properties here. Let's take a look at that code. So I simply set the text of my form to Olympic scoring instructor solution after I've initialized the components. Here is the button btn process underscore click, so the click event. We're going to have a variable called total. It's going to be a double, and another double variable called average score. I need to get the total of all 7 scores. Now remember, we want to find the average of the middle 5. But to do that, it's going to be easiest to find the total of all 7 scores, and we're going to find the high score and the low score. So if we subtract the high and the low, the 2 bookends of our scores, we'll be left with the middle 5, and we can then divide that by 5 to get our average of those middle 5 judges. So that's the purpose here. We're going to take each of the text values and parse them out as double values. Now, we probably should put this into a try-catch. I didn't bother to do that. We're going to assume that these are all numeric values going into those scores. So let's find the high score. So txt highscore.text equals txt score1.text. That's going to be our China score in this example. And then the high orb is going to be the orb that's in that first country, which is China. So we're going to get the image index, setting the image index of our high orb to that of the orb 1. And then we're going to set the name of the LBL high country.text to the text that's in LBL country 1. So again, that doesn't tie me into this having to be China. It can be any other country we might put there. If we only had one country, China would be our high score. Now let's compare it to the next country. If double.parse txt score2.text is greater than our txt high score.text, and again, I could have used variables here. I just simply used the text boxes, but variables would certainly work here. We could have put all of our scores into variables and our high score into variable. Multiple ways to do this problem. So if the second score is higher than the first, then I'm going to change our txt high score to be that text of txt score 2. And the high orb will be the image index of LBL orb 2. And the high country, LBL high country.text, will be the text that's in LBL country 2. By maintaining all these scores in the high country labels and text box, I can simply compare then the next 5 countries to whatever's in high. Notice there are no if-else's here. These need to be sequential because we need to make sure we're testing each country. We don't want to use a whole lot of compound Boolean expressions here. So a really bad approach, while it would work, a bad approach would be, say, if the China score is greater than the France score, and the China score is greater than the Germany score, and the China score is greater than the USA score, and so forth, and compared that to all 7. And we did that 7 times here at each one to see if each one's higher than all the others. First of all, it takes more processing. And secondly, chances of making a mistake in those complex Booleans is pretty high. And then what if we change the rules? Instead of 7 countries, we now want 12 countries. Now we're going to make those much more complex, and we have to add in more. Just by comparing each country to the high score allows us to make this extensible and easily add more countries if we need to. So we're doing the same thing here for TXT score 3, TXT score 4, TXT score 5, score 6, and score 7, and simply comparing them with whatever's in the high score. And if it's higher, changing the orb, the text that's there for the high score, and the country. That will find our highest score and what country it's from and change that orb to that high country. And we do the exact same thing, but this time we're going to compare it for the low country. So again, if China's the only country, China's going to be the low score. But now let's compare that low score to see if TXT score 2 is lower, or TXT score 3 is lower, or TXT score 4 is lower. And at the end of all those sequential if structures, we will have found the low score and the high score, set the orbs, and set the name of the country. Now we need to find the average. So we're going to take that total, and we're going to subtract from the total the TXT high score. And we're going to subtract from the total the TXT low score. And now I can find the average by taking the total and dividing by 5.0. And then finally, we're going to set the TXT average score.text to the average score that we just calculated and convert that to a string with 2 decimal places. And that is my solution to the Olympic judging problem. You can come up with a totally different approach, but I think your best approach is always going to be to use these sequential structures, but you might choose to do variables. Now we're going to find down the road, you could use something like arrays or lists to make this much more efficient, but we haven't gotten there yet. And so we need to kind of struggle with what we all currently know and see how we can solve with what we know, and then we'll find better ways to do things down the road. This is a great test of being able to work with sequential conditionals. And that's a technique you need to know how to do. Well, I suppose we should test this, make sure everything works. So looking at the default values I put in here, we can see that Sweden's going to be our high score. Looks like our low score is going to be Great Britain. Let's process those scores. That's exactly what we get here. We get the appropriate orbs and the name of the country and the score, and the average is 8.78. Is that correct? Well, let's do another little test here. So let's say 8.6 can be our base, and we're going to put this one 0.1 higher. This one we'll set as 8.5, be 1 lower. Then we've got an 8.4. Let's make this our lowest score, and we'll say it's 8.1. This one, since 8.4 is 2 less than 8.6, I'll make this one 8.8, and we'll make this our highest score, and we'll set it at 8.9. So we should get an 8.6 as our average, and that's what we get. And 8.9 Zimbabwe is our high score. Sweden now is our low score. The flag orbs are appropriate. You probably want to run a whole bunch of tests to make sure that each nation comes up as the low score and the high score. So we can easily do that. We could change this to say to 8.6 and make this one 8.1. And we'll make this our high score at 8.9, 8.7. We should still get 8.6, but now our France is our high score and China is our low score. And I want to keep doing that process to make sure that everything comes up correctly before I hand this over to my client. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the C# Xamarin Programming Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.